Good morning, Jamalyn.
Good morning, Kim.
Welcome back. It seems like it's been forever.
I know, it has been a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, between your time away and...
We were together at Christmas, right?
Yeah.
And then I was trying to think, we had a week where I was off because I was celebrating, Dave and I were celebrating our 19th anniversary.
Yeah, congratulations.
Which is pretty exciting.
It's exciting.
And then I think while we were on our 19th anniversary, I picked up COVID.
Yeah.
That's what every woman's looking for in this small box, right?
Yeah, right.
You open it up. And so I was gone then last week. So COVID has kind of gone through our house. I got it. Then Nathan got it. Dave has it right now. And now I have super immunity. I'm like fired up and ready to go.
Yeah. I haven't tested positive yet, but I had a close contact. So I did the 5 days of quarantine and got a negative test. But it's like everybody
I had a
COVID.
friend say, "Oh my gosh, do you know where you got it?" And I just started to laugh. I was like, from life, I mean, I think it's just kind of floating around everywhere.
I think so too.
Especially, I don't go anywhere, which is hysterical that I got it.
Yeah.
I mean, I work from home, so.
I mean, I always say you could get it at Costco, right?
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's everywhere right now. And I think the reason is just so our listeners know, I didn't have any symptoms. I was actually at the doctor for something else, and while they were there, they were like, "Do you want to do a COVID test?" And I was like, "Yeah, my throat kind of hurts," because I heard that's what you say. And they gave me one. I think I was getting ready to go on a girls' trip, so I was just trying to like check some boxes. And so the next day they're like, "Yeah, it was positive." I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe it. So I felt okay. I was a little sleepy, but I think I could have just had seasonal. What's that called? Seasonal
affective disorder.
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of that, and it was so gray, so I just blamed it on COVID. But I probably was a little depressed.
Yeah, you could have been.
But I just got back from Miami, so I've got a lot of vitamin D now,
Nice.
and I'm kind of hyped up on life a little bit. Except John said it's going to be 20 degrees by the end of the night, but...
So get outside right now.
I guess. I'm not listening to John in this case, but...
It's winter in Indiana. It's gloomy, it's gray, it's cold.
So with One Thing More, we typically talk about the sermon from the Sunday before, but I feel like we've kind of missed a couple sermons. Yeah. So I thought maybe for our listener today, we might throw a couple things in together.
Yeah, and I mean, our whole series is about spiritual practices. So, I mean, we won't do any, spoilers for the ones to come, but we can certainly talk about spiritual practices, the ones that we've mentioned on Sunday mornings in the sermon, and ones that you and I maybe practiced or have practiced.
Yeah, Dave and I are doing this Sunday together, Attentiveness.
Okay. And you're doing attentiveness.
So that was my reaction when he said that. He goes, "It's attentiveness." And like, I literally kind of like spit a little. I was laughing so hard. But the more I got to thinking about it, the more I realized attentiveness isn't always just being very quiet. Well, we'll talk about that next week. But
Okay.
So I do believe that I bring something to the table in the world of attentiveness.
Well, I'm waiting with bated breath.
I know.
Yeah.
But so you and Dave talked about quiet time, which today I took Nathan to school, then I drove. Margaret is quarantining at my parents' house since she's really trying to not get COVID.
One that hasn't had it.
Like legit packed her suitcase, everything, went to my parents' house. So then I had to drive from Nathan's school to go pick Margaret up at my parents' house. And I did it with the radio off.
Oh, yeah. That's a great practice.
You taught me that.
Good.
And I told myself, okay, 3 more minutes, and then you can turn the radio on. And before I realized it, I was at my parents' house, and it had been way more than 3 minutes.
Yeah, what did you notice?
I really did kind of think through. I kind of went through a list of gratitude because I am like just so incredibly thankful for this weekend I just had. I needed it so badly that I was just kind of going through a series of gratitude. And I have a friend whose parents are really ill, so I spent some time praying for them and, just some other people that I have said, oh, we'll be praying for you. And I thought, you know what, I actually really did pray for them, which is really great.
And it's so, that can be such a easy way to get some quiet time in because we're usually in our cars
You're right.
every day.
A lot.
Yeah. So just, turn off the manufactured noise.
Yeah. So I nailed that one. So A+ for me.
Awesome. Yay.
Not that it's a
Good for you.
competition, but I'm kind of winning. So, yeah.
Spiritual practices competition. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it keeps me feisty. What
Yeah,
can I
it
say?
does.
How do you do with silence?
I do great with silence, I think. I mean, a lot of times in my work, like I have to just wait, right? I don't want to fill up the space with my voice.
Right.
So a lot of times I'm just waiting for people to collect their thoughts or tell me about their feelings. And so a lot of times you have to like have the pregnant pause, and just not fill it up, which when I'm working with my students, my counseling students, like that is really a growing edge because when things get quiet and their client is not saying anything, what they want to do, sort of naturally is fill up that space.
And probably say what they think they should be saying.
Yeah, or give the person like
Yeah.
3 options, like
Right.
multiple choice for what they might
I
be
noticed you're
feeling.
not talking, so let me tell you right now you're feeling sad. That's
Exactly.
what you should be saying.
Exactly. Did
Yeah.
I get that right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think, probably because I've been doing that work for 15 years, it's pretty easy for me to be quiet. However, that's in my work. So in my personal practices, I'm not sure that I always, yes, I am. I'm sure that I don't always
Yes.
find or make the time to really intentionally create some quiet time,
Yeah. And you kind of had to schedule it. Like you schedule other things, like recently, did you see this funny post that was going on between Reese Witherspoon and Ina Garten? Do you know Ina Garten?
She's my favorite
Barefoot
cookbook.
Contessa. I love her.
Yeah, I do too.
I love her too because she doesn't have a size 6 waistline. That makes me really happy.
She looks like a cook, right?
She does, yeah. I would just dream to be invited to one of her dinner parties.
I love her garden.
Yes, all of it.
It's all on her tablescapes.
When
She's my fave.
Just as a side, just as a funny for people who watch Barefoot Contessa, when Margaret was really little, like maybe even 1 or 2, I started watching that a lot when I was home with her, and Margaret loved her. Like, I don't know if it was like the flow of her talk or something, but Margaret would just kind of like sit and stare. It was really funny. Anyway, Reese Witherspoon put something out like, every morning when you wake up, you should get up early. Make sure you're sitting out in the sun for at least 15 minutes to get that vitamin D. Schedule time for you to read an hour a day. And I'm like, what is this world she's living in, right? Well, then apparently down below in the comments, Ina was like, maybe that's how you start the day, but here's how I start the day. She's like, I wake up, I spend an hour in bed doing Sudoku on my phone. I try to plan like really good dinner parties with my friends and family because that's where I get my energy, like all this kind of stuff. And I thought, now that's more like my jam.
Yeah, and that's to say there's more than one way to seize the day, right? Like,
Yeah.
really, I mean, and where do you have to be living to sit outside for 15
Well,
minutes?
I
You
mean,
wouldn't
I
be
was like,
doing
you
that.
want me to, I would be like, excuse me, Ms. Witherspoon, I don't live in L.A.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. If I go sit out right now for 15 minutes, according to John, I'll get frostbite because it's going to be 20 degrees. So,
We're not doing that today.
No.
Not here.
so finding quiet time, I think you really have to schedule it.
I think you'd have to schedule it too. And one of the things that I don't know that Pastor Dave and I got to was the stuff I've been reading about brain imaging. And
yes.
how now, like, it's scientifically proven that people that have high spirituality or faith life or belief in something outside themselves are more protected against sadness and depression. And we can actually, I mean, we knew that anyway, right?
I mean, it
we're
makes sense
people
if
of faith.
you're part of, and also if you believe that there's a community, you don't feel lonely.
Right.
I mean, you do,
Yeah.
but you don't
You experience loneliness, but you know that it's not permanent.
Correct. Yeah. Like, that there can be a group of people to come around you.
Yeah.
I think, too, when you have, like, this idea that there's something else beyond you. So, like, in our case, we would believe that, Jesus is teaching us to love and to share and to care.
Yeah.
It gives you a purpose.
Exactly.
And a purpose helps you get up in the morning. It helps you drive you through the day.
Yep.
I mean, a lack of purpose is really difficult.
Yeah, because when you don't have purpose, you don't have connection, right?
Right.
So you probably don't have that community that's supporting you or that you can go to for support.
So some people would say, well, I believe in Jesus and all that, but I still don't really understand what my purpose is. And I would probably point them back to the quiet time.
Yeah, for sure.
Because things come in your mind.
Yeah, so speaking of that, like going back to your quiet time to find your purpose, I mean, we both sort of morphed out of what we were doing before into what we're doing now.
Yes,
and so
correct.
Was quiet helpful for you in
It was.
that?
I mean, I didn't feel my call to ministry with a lot of chaos and noise around me. I mean, it was a very peaceful sort of moment in my life. Yeah. Quiet. But I do think for myself, like, I loved my job. I loved the world I was living in. Mm-hmm. But I didn't feel like I had purpose. Mm-hmm. I remember, for me, we were at when you're in sales, a lot of times they do like these sales, meetings where they really want to try and motivate you to have, they're trying to give you a purpose to sell, right? But in the sales world, a lot of times the purpose is financial. Uh-huh. So I remember the guys, like, I want you to write down, like, what's 3 things in your life that you really want to be passionate about, and I wrote having a family, like sharing God's message, like meeting, like marrying someone, which at that point in my life, I wasn't even dating one. I was so shocked at what I put on the paper. No offense, listeners, but I actually whispered to myself, oh, shit. Like,
this
because
is what I really want.
I was like, I didn't write like a boat, which that's what they wanted. It's just, and they were like, now find a picture and put it over your phone. So when you're making calls, this will motivate you. And I was like, my purpose, my vision of what life was way different than the world I was living in, which would make sense. I was 23. Right. I was trying to kind of think about the next stage of life. But then I realized what I really need is a purpose, But being called to ministry doesn't actually answer that question either. No.
You have to have, you have to find purpose in the ministry.
Which was so disappointing for me.
Yeah.
So going back to your question, the silence, I think, you could say it was real quiet in that room as we're writing these things down, but it was like I wish I'd kept that piece of paper. I think it would be really neat for me to have that in my life now. Yeah. But I think for me, then it was like, well, what does that mean? And I started listening more, which meant I had to be quiet.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, because if you're talking, you aren't listening, right?
Right. So once I recognized, oh, brother, this is not going to be what I do, which was so disappointing for me. Yeah. Because I really did love it.
Yeah, you were early on in your career. Yeah, for me, I was sitting in a meeting and we were talking about who our customer was going to be for an 80-inch television. And I was kind of like,
Jamalyn Williamson, that's who.
I'm out. Like, who needs
You're like,
that?
I haven't met her yet, but she's going to want it.
It's like, okay, who needs that? Nobody. Like, who can afford that? Not very many people at the time, right? So it was just kind of like, okay, I think I was like, okay, God, I realize that. Like, you're calling me to do something with a little more intrinsic value than figuring out, like, how to make a remote with 100 buttons or a gigantic
I
TV.
want all of that. Y'all should have just had an 8x10 photo of me up in your conference room. I know, it is hard. And then I have some friends that I was so envious of because they continued to love their work. Like, I had a manager at the time who, she was so good at what she did, And really her purpose in ministry was to mentor people like me. Like I watched her have a really successful career, be a wife and a mother. Like I watched her figure all that out. Years later, when I had little kids, I would think about Becky and be like, okay, now I remember Becky running out of the office to pick up her kids from daycare because it was like $5 for every minute she was like, and but somehow she made it work. So if people are listening, please do not hear us. Like there is such powerful roles people of faith can have working in whatever place they are.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But I just couldn't scratch the itch, like I kept, and I think going back once I recognized the call, I would go back to college, and I probably was being called to ministry in college, but there was no way I was going to be quiet in college.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Right, right.
Like,
Well,
I was not being called to ministry at Harry's, and it was not quiet there.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So there is a lot of power in the silence and movement in the silence as well.
Yeah. Which kind of, we also talked some in there about frugality, which was what Pastor Seth hit on this past week, and like the difference between wants and needs. And I think, I'm going to go back to quiet, because in the quiet, you can sort of discern that. Like, is this something that is going to be helpful in my life or not, really?
Well, and I think some frugality is thrown to the side when impulsivity takes place. And you're never impulsive in quiet.
No. When you said that, the vision I had in my mind was the checkout at any place
Oh,
nowadays.
yes, yeah.
And how you have to go through the maze of
Yes.
chips and candy and magazines and grocery
Again,
bags.
I am like a marketer's dream when it comes up, because I'm like, I do need that sponge thing that is no different than the 85-cent one, but I probably need that $5 one.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I want to be clear, though, I have never cut my toothpaste open and scraped from inside of it.
Well, I have not
So
done
Seth's
that.
going to be on his own on that one.
But I have done it with the tube of lotion on the regular. Like, there's lotion in there, so I just cut it and get the lotion out. Why throw it away? I'm with him on that one.
I think
Not
you guys
the toothpaste. That's a little
really
messy.
great. I just want to know, like, were you alive during the Depression? Is that why you do this? Or
No. I mean, my grandparents certainly were. But
I know. It's like my grandma who would never throw a rubber band away.
Oh, yeah.
I want to be like, Grandma, there's not like, any kind of, what were the little sheets where they had?
But, frugality, though, that kind of frugality could help us, save the planet.
Sure. Or I'll be way more selfish and think that kind of frugality might let me retire 3 years earlier than I.
Yeah.
Getting back from Florida, I'm like, I'm going to have to be able to have a little time down there in my retirement.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe I will start
And
cutting
getting
my
away,
lotion open.
just getting away. How about that as a spiritual practice? Because also what Seth said is that spiritual practices can be the ordinary things that we are doing anyway. We can turn those into something spiritual.
Well, I think for me, because of my personality too, getting away is really important because, I was with there were 6 of us that are still very tight from elementary school, high school, that age of our life. And just having time to laugh so hard at ourselves. And it was so therapeutic for my soul.
Yeah.
To just laugh and to think, I cannot believe I did that. And
yeah, it's nice to have people that have known you for so long. Like, I'm going in March to meet my friend Dana. And
yes.
I bought her a mug for Christmas. It says, we've known each other for so long, I'm not sure who's the bad influence. 'Cause
Correct.
she knows so much about my whole life, right?
Yeah, I'm always like, everyone has signed a confidentiality form, and so. But I think when you know people that long, I'm like, go ahead, say whatever you want to about me, but I've got probably 4 stories more, to share.
Yeah.
But so I think spiritual practices can be spending time in community, and it is hard if you haven't felt like you have found your community. But I think that's one of the things that Seth is working on here, like trying to get people in small groups. And so if you're listening and you're like, I don't really have that group of people, really contact Seth, because he wants to help people identify that, so that groups, so that people are.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's the place where when you find your people, you find your passion, or your people can help you find what you're passionate
Or they'll say,
about.
I really see this in you, you know.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. One of the things that while we were on our trip one night, we were like, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what do you wish you were doing? And it was fun to listen to my friends kind of say, you know, oh, I wish I had like gone and worked at ESPN, you know, and then they came to me and I said, well, I don't really feel like I had a say in it. Like when you're called to something, it's not like, I said, I really love what I'm doing now. I said, but it took me a while within this calling to figure out what I wanted my niche to be. But then later I was like, but I probably would have loved to have been a backup country singer.
I could see that. Not backup, though.
No, I would have liked to have been a backup because they wear like the fun outfits and
they have the
I could have done.
choreography.
I always wanted to be a pip, you know.
Oh, man. Yeah, they had it. They had the dance moves all together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I tell you what, we just have plowed through our time.
Really? Already?
It
Man,
happens.
I hope it goes as quickly for our listeners as it does for us.
Okay, so we're going to keep practicing silence.
And frugality.
And frugality.
Yeah, that one's harder. Like when he talked about cars, especially like the car with no accessories, I'm like, I kind of like that heated seat.
Yeah, I think Seth might be on his own on this one. God love him. There's probably other people that's the way they connect spiritually, and so that's great.
Yeah.
I'm
the giving part I can get with, but
100%.
Yeah.
But maybe just finding a way, and frugality doesn't have to be with money either. You can be frugal with other things too.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know what those other things are because I really want the 80-inch TV. I mean, when you watch sports, you feel like you're there. But that's a whole other conversation. So
it is. We'll be back, right?
Yes. All right. Well, we will tune in this Sunday for Dave and Jamalyn. Yeah. We're going to talk about attentiveness.
Attentiveness. Definitely, I'm tuning in for that.
It is going to be a major plot twist when Jamalyn talks about it.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Have a great week.
Yep. Have a good week.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.